You are listening to Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris on Paris Underground Radio.
Salut! You have reached Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris. My name is Mollie, and I'm a former music executive, and I moved to Paris in 2022 for an adult gap year, kind of a post-COVID YOLO vibe. In the podcast, I'll be talking to musicians, songwriters, producers, and executives, both traveling and natives, about what they like to do here. I was interested in where they like to play shows, where they hang out, what kind of art they like to check out, where their favorite neighborhoods are, and my personal favorite is finding out where they like to eat and drink. Hope you enjoy. So Calle Lehmann is a songwriter that I've known for years in Stockholm, Sweden. He is signed to Universal Music Publishing. He took me and my husband to Way Out West Festival last year and showed us around Gothenburg. So cool. Such a cool, fun person. And I knew that he had a love for Paris, but I got to learn so much more about him, that he lived in Brussels as a kid and some differences between the two countries. And I wanted to talk to a European about what drove him to come to Paris. Why does he want to come down here and see it? And he's really funny and wonderful guy. So enjoy the interview. Hello, Calle.
Hello, Mollie.
I don't think I really ever noticed that our names rhyme, but I do know that we have the same last name.
Well, kind of. I have to Americanize my name. I can't say Mollie and Calle. It doesn't work.
Right. Isn't the American translation of the Swedish name Carl?
So Carl and Calle is like Bob for Robert. So like everyone whose name is Calle in Sweden, almost everyone, their actual name is Carl. But we don't like to talk about that.
Is your actual name Carl?
Yeah.
Okay, this is also amazing because my husband also has an old man named Ralph, but goes by Sam. So
the funny thing is here it's not an old man's name. It's just when you go to...
Oh, really?
Yeah, when you go to America or most English-speaking countries, you're like, oh, got it.
Yeah, Carl.
Yeah. I'm like an 80-year-old bank manager.
Yeah, all right. Calle Lehmann. So I would love if you could tell the folks what it is that you do and where you live. And yeah, let's start there.
Yes, I live in Stockholm, Sweden. I am a songwriter. I'm signed to Universal Music Publishing out here in Scandinavia. I guess you'd call me primarily what I do is I'm what's called a topliner, which is I write melody, lyric, and music for songs for either with artists or for artists, or writing towards a brief that's been sent to us by our publishers or someone else's A&R manager, and tried to figure out what the artist in question is looking for.
What would a brief look like? Is it like a mood, or is it like super specific? Do you know who the artist is, or is it often like general?
Sometimes it'll be very specific and like we're looking for these types of songs. We've released these types of songs and we have a bunch of those. So now we're looking for this, or we've done this and it's gone really well. Let's do more of that. Sometimes it's for a specific artist. Sometimes it's labels that have a specific type of artists that will say like, this is the kind of music that we're looking for our artist right now. But a lot of the times it can get pretty specific.
We know that Sweden has magic in the water for songwriters between like Max Martin, but like ABBA, and like, you know, it's just a really special place for, you know, artists, but like specifically songwriting. So did you grow up wanting to be a songwriter because you saw it around you? Did you want to do that when you were younger? How did music and you in Stockholm come together? And like, how did that become an inspiration to write songs?
I've always really known that I was going to do music. When I was younger, I maybe thought that I was going to play more music and play live, and went to school for that. And the songwriting was kind of something I was dabbling with it when I was a kid. And when I was younger, I didn't really realize that that's what I wanted to do until a little bit later on, when I realized that I could never decide on what kind of music I was going to make. And so this seems like the perfect thing to just make all of it.
Right. Do everything.
Yeah. And so I kind of just met some friends who did it for a living, and started kind of dabbling with them. Started out with me just demoing stuff for them, because sometimes when songwriters write songs and they don't necessarily sing, and so they need someone to come in to sing the song they wrote so they can sell their product kind of thing.
You can actually sing.
I'd like to think so.
Well, you sang on some records, right? That are like out on the internet?
Yeah, I've done some stuff with the American DJ Griffin, and I've released a couple songs with Alesso as well.
Awesome. I mean, I'm a fan of your voice, so I hope everyone else goes and listens.
Thank you.
Well, okay, so you're from Stockholm, right?
Well, I'm from Sweden, but I was born in Gothenburg. I moved to Stockholm when Gothenburg's on the west coast of Sweden, and I moved to Stockholm when I was 9 or 10 in 1999, and I've been here since.
So, as a European growing up, Gothenburg and Stockholm, how often did you and your family, or did you like travel around, coming to mainland Europe and going to different countries? Is that something that was common to you? And, when was the first time you ended up going to France?
So when I was 2, I think, we had to move to Brussels for work. And so brought the family out. So we lived in Brussels for 2 or 3 years when my dad, as the Swede that he is, worked for Volvo. And so we moved to Brussels in Belgium. And I know that that's the first time we went to Paris. Because I think we could it was a drive. And so we went to like Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like we drove around. Obviously, I don't remember that much because I was 2, 3, and 4, I think, when I was there. And so I don't remember that much. But I know we went skiing. And I know we went to Disneyland and to Paris around those trips.
Well, these are the things that stand out, like big memories, is like Disneyland.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing. Did you learn any French when you were in Brussels?
I don't remember almost any French, but apparently like I was fairly fluent as far as a 4-year-old goes. But that's also like the Belgian version of French, which I'm told is slightly different from the French.
Yeah, I mean...
But yeah, we have videos of myself running around speaking a language that I can't understand.
Wow.
Just kind of trippy.
It's so interesting how kids' brains are just sponges. There's no barrier to entry. They'll take in anything. We should really have them in college when they're 4. And then when we're college age, just let us be 4-year-olds and just eat pizza and watch cartoons.
Yeah, right. You just have to decide whether or not you want to be an engineer when you're 4.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's awesome. I had no idea that you lived in Brussels and that you spoke French as a 4-year-old.
I'm sure it wasn't that great. But I had French teachers and I spoke to them, which is weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool. And then, so as you got older and started making your own decisions to go on trips with your friends and whenever, so where did you travel around in Europe when you were kind of getting older and doing trips by yourself?
France was actually never one of them. We went to the music high school I went to, organized these trips to the Alps. So we went to Austria twice to just go snowboarding. No
Sound of Music recreation? Wasn't that?
No Sound of Music recreation, just kids in mountains. So I guess that's kind of that.
Yeah, that's the story as I remember it.
No, we never. I don't think I ever went to France as a young adult. I guess when I was in my teens and all that, we went to Portugal to go surf and all the Scandinavian countries. Right, we'd go to Oslo and Copenhagen and places like that, but. It wasn't until I kind of got a little bit older that I started going a little bit more to London fairly often, a couple times a year to write and see my friends and all that. And we'll go to Copenhagen quite a bit as well. And Spain and, of course, Paris every now and then.
When you did start going to Paris, why Paris? What did you like about it? And why did you go back? Because you've come back to Paris multiple times. What do you like about it and what drew you back?
So, I mean, I think it's as simple of an answer as that sounds like. It's just kind of the vibe of the place. And it seems very kind of, in a lot of ways, at least certain communities, there's very liberal and nice, and people are very kind of put an emphasis on enjoying the good things in life. And if you come from a place like Sweden where it's can sometimes become a little bit, I don't know what the word would be, organized and reined in a little bit. Which is a great place to be from, but sometimes can be a boring place to be in.
Yeah. For you, going to Paris was relaxing, letting loose, a little more.
A little bit like that. The weird thing about working as a songwriter is, because the 3 times I've gone to Paris, I've been to Paris, I think 4 or 5 times in my kind of adult life.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 3 times that I went, I was working. And what's weird about working as a songwriter is that you get to go all these places, but you're also kind of confined to a single place. And a lot of times, since we need that place to be soundproof, it's underground.
Oh, gosh.
So you like go to Paris, like, I'm in Paris. And then you just go into a place with no windows and you sit there for 4 days and then you fly home. But what's nice about the first time I went to Paris, at least, to work, was that it was for a songwriting camp that was put together by this Swedish company. And I think they did it together with YouTube, like YouTube Europe. And they organized it so we got to fill a boutique hotel in Pigalle.
No way.
With a bunch of songwriters. And then they kind of turned the suites of the hotel into kind of makeshift studios. And then we just worked out of that hotel.
That's so cool.
Which was incredible, because that's usually not... I mean, I was very, very much on the up and coming a little bit when I was doing that. So we were like dirt broke and used to very small studios and kind of cramped spaces and no air and that. We got there and that was, I mean, that opulent would be the right word for that, at least.
It's also like that to me, having a hotel where every room is a different sort of creative space is such an era of cool and like artsiness, and it's just what a sexy experience. Like that is just...
Oh yeah, it was. It felt nice.
Yeah, I mean, and Pigalle is like, I don't know, I love Pigalle. I think it's very cool up there, and
yeah, same.
Yeah, sounds like a mind-blowing experience.
It was very nice. It was and like a bunch of my friends from here came on that trip as well, like other songwriters, and so we all kind of hung out. And when you go do something like that, they usually like organize, like, oh yeah, today we're going to go there, and today we're going to go there. So you're like working for a little bit and then doing other things. And then the second time I went, I went specifically to work with a band that I don't think they're a band anymore, but 2 of the guys in the band are working as songwriters.
A French act?
French act, yeah. I forget, because they had several names, and I forget what the name was now. But that was kind of it was a really fun week, but it's also a little bit strange to work with a band where some of them speak English and some of them don't, because you're trying to like, how do you like these lyrics? And they're like, oh, no, you know, because they want to sing in English.
Right. I think actually I've been feeling like there's an opportunity for English topliners to come down here and to continue to find people to work with. I mean, I think the French language is so incredibly beautiful, and I think the way that they say things is it just is stunning to me. But to translate a phrase in French to something as stunning and beautiful in English you can't necessarily do a direct translation. You'd really want an English speaker to be able to turn the phrase and to have the same kind of impact. So I really think there's some opportunity for topliners here that, you know, I would love to help figure out.
I think so. It's always interesting with languages that are very phonetically beautiful, that sound beautiful, and then you say the phrase in a different language and it's just like, oh, it's just a regular phrase, but it sounds incredible in French, kind of thing.
So that was the second time. And then what were the other times that you went?
I think I've only been there to work 3 times. And the third time, it wasn't Paris, but we went to Caen and had another one of those songwriting camps during Midem.
Sick.
Which I think is like kind of the French South by Southwest, like an industry festival for Europe.
Yes, although I'm not sure if it's still going on. But how was that?
I think it was the week before the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
And so I went with an artist who was invited to the camp, and I was kind of at the time writing all of her things. And so she was like, I don't want to go to the camp alone. And so I went with her, and we kind of did the camp as a team specifically for her project. And it was good. It was nice to just meet. I think because it was Midem and because it was I think it was put on by some sort of a like government body kind of thing, some sort of cultural.
That checks out.
Yeah. And so it was a lot of French artists. It was kind of bringing some artists from outside and some artists from France and kind of letting them meet, which was great. The only thing that can be a little frustrating with those camps is that a lot of the emphasis sometimes isn't put on the actual writing. It's more put on kind of collecting content and having us go to things.
Really?
And so you're like, hey, we'd like to work. It's like, yeah, well, at 4, we had a lunch. I'm like, but we don't want to go to lunch. We want to work.
If you're enjoying this episode of Music Around Paris, you may also be interested in our sister podcast, Don't Miss This, which is about interesting happenings going on in Paris every week. Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris. You came to Paris in the last year for fun.
Yeah, I went. It was my girlfriend's 30th birthday. And so kind of did a little surprise trip to Paris and stayed, again, like fairly close to Pigalle, but we stayed at a hotel whose name I will butcher if I try to say it.
Oh, come on. Tell me, which one?
Oh, God. Rochechouart, I guess.
Great.
I don't know.
I think that sounded great.
Rochechouart. It was fantastic. Yeah, in the 10th district, it was incredible. I think it was in the 10th or 11th.
So when you were picking a place for her 30th, why Paris?
She, much like me, we had kind of a similar childhood in the sense that she also spent some time due to her dad's work in another country. They were in Germany, and she had just talked a bunch about like the fact that she'd never really been in her adult life. And I was like, well, then we should go.
Okay, so that's awesome. I love a romantic.
Yeah, that's basically it. And like, I really like Paris as well. It seemed like a nice place to see together.
What did you do and how many days did you stay?
We were there for 5 days and we just walked around. We like the first day we basically just said like, do you just want to kind of get everything that you have to see out of the way? And then we just did like the Arc de Triomphe, like straight to Eiffel Tower, Louvre, blah, blah, blah. Just like all the things where it's just like, we got to just see it.
Right.
Like we didn't pay admission or anything. We just went like, there, that is, and there's that, and there's this. And now we're done with that. And now we can eat bread, drink wine.
So day one's done. You've walked on the Seine. You saw the Eiffel Tower. You saw the Louvre. And then for the next 3 or 4 days, you just walk around? Do you like pick certain places?
Yeah, kind of.
Did you pick a neighborhood each day or?
Yeah, a little bit. We went back to the 6th district quite a bit. I think it was due to a kind of recommendation from a common friend of ours.
Was it a restaurant or just like?
No, just walked around. And I think that was our main mistake we did, was that we didn't really make any reservations. I was just like, we'll just walk into places. And apparently not at all.
I was going to ask you if you had any like lessons from your trip that you would tell a traveler. And it sounds like reservations might be one of them.
Reservations. And then I'd say, and I don't know if this is correct because I was there for 5 days and it's the only time where I've been like off in Paris. But I feel like the better a restaurant looks, the worse it is. And the worse it looks, the better it is.
I would agree.
Like if it's scenic, they rely on the scenery and skimp on the food. And if it's looks like shit, the food's probably amazing.
I would definitely agree. I joke that if you ever see anything that looks Instagrammable, don't go there.
Yeah.
If you want to take a picture outside with the fake flowers and it looks really pretty, go ahead, but don't eat there because the food's probably not going to be as good. I also think Paris is somewhere where, you know, there's a bunch of lists that you can find online. And if you really want to experience good French food, just do a little bit of homework, you know what I mean? And then you also have places where they all kind of look the same, but you know they're not all created equal. You know, it's like this bistro and this bistro both they have a red awning and they look the same, but they're really not.
I think that's the hardest thing about trying to find anywhere to eat, because there's a lot of what to the untrained eye, I guess, looks the same. And so I wonder which one's good. Because some of them aren't at all.
Yeah.
Also, the beer's the expensive thing. The wine's the cheap thing. That kind of freaked me out a little bit, because that's usually the other way around, especially here in Sweden. I didn't realize that beer would be the expensive part.
I never considered that it's flip-flopped.
You can get a bottle of wine for 13 euros and a beer, a single small beer is 12.
Apparently it's what we do. Well, great. That's what I wanted to hear from you. I wanted advice. I wanted to know what you do in Paris. And now I want you to come back and visit. Thanks for being here today. Hope you enjoyed the chat on Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris. Please check out the other great podcasts on the Paris Underground Radio Network. If you have a second, also, please rate us on Apple Podcasts. It does actually help. And if you want to find me, I'm at Mollie on a Trip on Instagram, and I'd love to chat about music and food and wine and everything Paris. And I'm also super happy to hear suggestions for future guests. Thanks.
Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris was produced by Jennifer Garrity for the Paris Underground Radio Podcast Network.